Today we're talking potatoes, roast potatoes. These, you know, is the stuff of dreams, really, roast potatoes, isn't it? Aren't they gorgeous? I think we all love them. But I think we've probably all had indifferent roast potatoes at some point in our lives, or bad roast potatoes, probably even all made indifferent or bad roast potatoes in our time. And I think that's a shame and a crime because it's so easily avoided. I'm very big on eating a little of what you fancy, everything in moderation. So if I'm going to eat something that is sort of, unavoidably, it's a carb and it's slathered in a fair bit of fat if it's going to be a delicious one. So I'm a big believer that if you're going to put carbs and fats into your body, you should jolly well enjoy them and make sure it's really good. So for years I didn't eat roast potatoes when I went anywhere and had a roast, because I would look at the potatoes and think, you know what, you don't look that good, I'm not going to waste my calories on you. So I didn't. So not so much calories as just, you know, those particular food groups. I think, you know, be a little more aware of what you're putting into your body. So I then, as I hit my 20s, got into my mid-20s and late 20s, I thought, well, this is ridiculous because roast potatoes, everybody goes on about them, they must be delicious. So I started trying to make roast potatoes as delicious as my mum's. So I worked through, she lives in Belgium, so she has different potatoes, so I had to work with different potatoes here, tried all the different potatoes, I tried all the different methods, I tried coating them in semolina, I tried cooking them in goose fat and all the different things. But ultimately, after sort of 5 or 6 years of just doing them slightly differently every Sunday, I came up with some really, really basic rules that will give you perfect roast potatoes every time. So for me, King Edwards, it's as simple as that. I've tried roosters, they're okay. I've tried Maris Piper, they're okay. There are other potatoes that are okay, but King Edwards, just for me, you can't beat them. If you want to try it with a different potato, be my guest. I'm not the boss of you. But for me, yes, King Edwards every time. I will actually, if I go to the supermarket and they're out of King Edwards, I will actually go to another supermarket. And believe you me, I'm A, busy, and B, very lazy. So for me to go somewhere else, I really mean it. Secondly, don't peel them. There is no need ever to peel a potato, ever. If you're doing mash, leave the skins on. If you're doing roasties, leave the skins on. It works so well. They're full of nutrition, we all know that, but we all think for some reason that we have to peel them. Just never bother. You'll see how they come out. Yes, they crisp up and they just start to separate from the fluffy interior. Spoilers, I'll just let you see. One of the great things about roast potatoes is that they stay more or less the same size when they're cooked as they are when they're raw. So if you like weights and measures, you can weigh out as approximately 200 grams per person is a generous portion of potatoes for roast. But equally, you can just look at them. So this would be enough for 3 reasonable portions or 2 very hungry people. So cut them up, not too much. The larger ones I'm going to cut into 3, and bearing in mind that's the shape and size they're going to be when they're done. We all love crispy edges, and so I keep mine quite nice and flat. If it's the fluffy middles that you like and you're not that fussed about crispiness, cut them chunkier. We like both, this way you will get both. So we're just going to pop those in the pan. Always use more water than you think for potatoes and pasta and rice, any of the starches, because a large amount of water has a specific heat capacity. So if you have a large amount, it's easier to keep it at the same temperature. It's less likely to keep boiling over or going off the boil. You know that thing when you're like, oh God, it was just boiling and now it's not boiling at all. Very annoying. So a bit more water in the pan, and also the starch comes out of the potatoes or rice or pasta while you're cooking it. So if you don't want gluey, starchy carbs, use plenty of water, okay? So more water than you think. I like to give them a bit of a rinse. Take out the first amount of starch. Sometimes it's loads and sometimes it's not so much. That time wasn't so bad. A basic rule of thumb for anything that you're boiling on the stove is if it grows above the ground, put it into boiling water. So that would be greens, broccoli, anything like that. If it's a root vegetable and grows below the ground, put it into cold water and bring it to the boil on the stove. So these are going into cold water, and beep beep. So I set timers. If you're a regular watcher of this channel, you will know I set timers for everything because I'm easily distracted. I'm normally doing 10 things at once. Even if I think something just needs a couple more minutes, I'll set a timer, because otherwise I've fallen down a Pinterest hole or a Facebook hole or just got distracted making something else. So timers remind you. I'm pretty confident these are spot on. Just gonna bring it over here. That is off. Yeah. What you need is for your, if you get a nice thin little knife like this, not a serrated one because that's going to grip, and just poke it into your potatoes. If your potatoes don't lift out of the pan, they're done. They're good enough to eat at this point, but we're going to roast them to make them better than good enough to eat, obviously. Just check that. So, drain them. I've got a sieve in the sink in case any escape, but don't worry too much about a little bit of water in the bottom, because that can just go in your pan with everything else. Because you know what happens to water in the oven? It heats up and it turns into steam. You know what costs you a fortune if you buy it from a very good kitchen manufacturer, name no names? A steam oven. So you know, a little bit of extra water in there is not going to do your potatoes any harm. So butter, good average cooking butter, nothing fancy. I always use salted butter. I don't see the point of unsalted butter. It seems to me that most recipes that include unsalted butter then say add a pinch of salt, so I just don't get that at all. Excuse my messages beeping away, it's that time of day. There'll be one of the daughters asking me what's for dinner tonight. Turkey kofta, in case you wanted to know. So lots of butter in there. Good olive oil, doesn't have to be excellent olive oil, but it should be extra virgin, because you are actually going to taste that the potatoes don't have that much flavour themselves. So what we're tasting is, yes, the potato, but then the butter, the olive oil and some salt. Decent pan, let's just move that out of the way. If you've got stoneware, that's great. I love a bit of stoneware. Put the lid on that to melt the butter because there's no need to do that work. The potatoes are going to do it anyway. Yeah, stoneware's great. If you have a stoneware pan, use it because they heat up evenly, all that stuff that I'm sure you all know. Otherwise, get decent aluminium pans, quite thick ones, quite solid ones. You don't want really thin pans. They don't heat evenly, they heat from the outside, and then you think you can't cook because you've got crap pans. You know, you can't do good jobs with crap tools. Just don't even try. You wouldn't expect to, I don't know, run a marathon in flip-flops. You'd want a decent pair of trainers. So have good knives, have good pans, have good chopping boards. This is stuff you're using not all day, you're not me. Wait, this is stuff you're using every day. You're probably cooking at least once a day, every day. I know, I am, although like I say, all day. So yeah, I have stuff that is a pleasure to use. So that butter's melted nicely, and the olive oil's in there. There's still some water in there. You can see that's quite liquid. Yum yum. Put that over there. And we just want to, have we got tongs? No, we haven't. Typical. The oven is preheated, by the way, to 180, the magic number, virtually everything. If you're in doubt, just put the oven on 180. If you're cooking something that didn't come in a packet with instructions that say to the contrary, 180 is a pretty good guess. Okay, that looks like they're swimming in fat. Doesn't matter because that's not all going to get absorbed by the potatoes, and better that than less. In all honesty, I've used more than I normally would, or in fact, I've actually cooked far fewer potatoes than I normally would because I'm doing this for you guys. So normally I would cook a far larger amount and use relatively, a different amount of butter. But there they are, and I don't care, it doesn't matter. Did I just sprinkle? Yes, I just put the salt over. You can just sprinkle a bit of normal table salt on. I really like big chunks of sea salt. Cendrillon d'Alande or Cornish sea salt or Malvern salt, whichever one you like. But again, if you're going to have salt, make it nice salt. Make it, it feels like a bit of a performance doing all that. So that's not a bad thing. Pepper as well, excuse me. Dashing off screen and coming back the other side like magic. Here I am. Pepper grinder's empty. Right, well, I'm not going to bore you while I fill up the pepper grinder. I'm going to pop these in the oven and I'll add some pepper while they're cooking. So they just go in like that, quite high up in the oven, and they're going to take at least 45 minutes. Sometimes they take longer if you've got other things in there in the oven with them, which is absorbing the heat, or if you keep opening the door and shutting it. So use your eyes. If you're doing this with a roast, your meat can come out way before your potatoes anyway. So we have the meal based on when the potatoes are ready, and the meat is fine to rest for a bit. In fact, it should, because it becomes so tender. So we're going to leave those in there for a while. If this was a Sunday, a normal Sunday, I would at this point sit down, put my feet up, and have a glass of wine. Sadly, it's a weekday, so I'm not going to do that. But that's another top tip for you. Guys, I'm just going to show you in the oven. You ready? Let's take a peek. Ooh, steam. Look at that. And you see that just lifting up there? Oven shut. Okie dokie. These have been in about half an hour. So, apart from the sneak peek we had earlier, I haven't moved them or done anything to them. I'm somewhat allergic to doing things that I don't need to do. So I don't tend to poke about at stuff. Now, you see how gorgeously crisp those are underneath. And I should have mentioned, I always cook them cut side down first, and then turn them over halfway through for the second bit. And you can see, I'm just going to hold this up. Look at that. Crispy skin lifting away, and inside there it is, it's so gorgeous. Flip that one and back in they go. They should now be ready. I had a look a minute or so ago and they looked lovely, so let's have a look. Oh yes. Turn the oven off. That will, I think you'll agree, do very nicely indeed. Just gonna knife, I just want you to hear the crunch. Ready? And look at that. I don't know if you saw that, we had steam like on an M&S advert there. I don't know if the camera will have picked that up, it's only a little iPhone camera. So look at that, they're soft and fluffy in the middle, they are crispy on the outside, and all we did was boil them and then stick them in the oven with some olive oil and some butter. Nothing fancy, nothing that you haven't already got in your fridge and store cupboard. So there you go. Perfect roast potatoes. No excuses. Do click the button below to subscribe or give us a like or both. Thank you.